What's up, Digidestins? This is Kyle D, better known as RideMyAvatar, and today we're going to be looking at a little bit of the Ultimate Cups, actually. I figure since we've had now 4 events, it would be great to actually discuss this a little bit more of how this format is active and presenting itself. So without further ado, let's dive into the video and talk about it. So let's go over a little bit. I know that people are kind of skeptical on the Ultimate Cup in generalization, but we have had 4 events so far, and those events have shown a lot different in drasticity than what we are used to seeing for this format. And it has developed in a way that it's actually really good, in my opinion. You know, being able to do a single color deck building with Mulligan, huge. A lot of players aren't really that creative when it comes down to it. And not to say that it's not all just because of net decking, but a lot of players, our formats are kind of solved. And by the time we get it, it's just so solved that it's just like, we're going to know what the best deck is. This is just what happens when you're like 4 sets behind. I mean, 1 to 2 formats is fine because then you can mess around and go like, okay, you know, I kind of see where they're going with it, but maybe I can do something a little different. But now we're kind of, with so many sets behind, we know what the format's looking like. We know what's enough data's in place to make things happen. But with this Ultimate Cup ruling changes, this can lead to being a lot of fun events. I mean, even just side events in future major big in-person events, having the singleton color deck building with Mulligan, boom. After playing 4 to 5 rounds of meta, sometimes you just like, I just want to play something different. I want to play a format that's slightly, you know, better. You know, I can't say this is going to be better, but, you know, right now, I can say this right now, there's only 1 OTK deck. The rest are kind of struggling right now to exist because certain cards are restricted or banned in this format. Cool Boy and X Antibody literally could have been banned cards. Cannot be included in the decks. Boom. But we went a different route. Ban card is Death Xmon, Greymon X Antibody, and Cerberus Werewolf Mode. They already knew, you know, if they allowed Greymon to be able to multi-attack like a fiend, you know that for that moment in time, this was going to happen. But what's really nice is they restricted to the 1 card that mattered for making that couple extra attacks in. So this is really good in that informational pool. And then restricting Grand Kuwaga and Chaos Degradation down to 1 made the format feel refreshing because now you can't just play SetCon with a bunch of recovery and just go like, answer this, answer this, answer this, answer this, answer this, answer this, answer this. Oh, look, I have 4 Chaos Degradations. You know, stuff like that really does set players off, and they have a lot of time resenting. But with this restriction, we didn't see any SetCon so far in 4 events. So let's take a look at it. We have Bloom Lord taking up majority of it at 23 tops so far. Then we have Blue Flare at 8, Mirva at 7, Machinedramon at 4, All Force at 4, Gallimon at 4, Dora Brick at 4, Black War Greymon X at 4, Dark Knightmon at 2, Yellow Hybrid at 2, Gabubon at 1, and 1 Grandis. Proving that 1, Dorobrick is the only OTK deck in the format of the Ultimate Cup format. The rest are a little more player skill based. Bloomlord is a very much skill based player centric deck. It is not an auto win. If you're playing it, you can mess up your timings and wrong adventures. If your opponent is really good at teching and understanding what your deck can do, Bloomlord can be punished very hard for making those mistakes. You know, it's not an auto win. The deck is strong, but it also comes down to confident pilots. Then you have like Mirva, who is a, you know, skill-based deck. This is skill. This is skill. Blue Flare, sort of skill. I mean, this is just basically guarantee your stuff. You know, as long as you can get to a Kiriha, and then just, if they have 2 or more, you get free value out of it, it's going to happen. But then you have like Machinedramon, that's skill-based. That deck is a lot of making the right calls at the right time. all four, same thing. Skill base, you have to make the right calls at the right time. It's not an autopilot deck. Gallimon, this is a little more less skill based, but you still have to know your matchups and know when to promote, when to not to promote. Stuff like that really does play into your deck's design. You have like Doro Brick that is basically draw OTK. So this one's a little less, skill based. It's just, oh, you see it, you're dead. Then you have Black War Greymon X, a little less skill based. This one's a technical deck, mid rangey. As long as you get the way you want it, the deck is just threatening. Dark Knightmon, a little more skill based, making the right calls at the right time. Yellow Hybrid, Yellow Hybrid's hybrid. Then you have Gabumons, an aggro-based deck, and then OTK deck. Stuff like this really does play into understanding the format. And, out of 64 decks, yes, Bloomlord taking up the highest percentage is really scary, but we still have a couple more events lined up this month, and we're in this format for the rest of this Ultimate Cup. We are not getting out of it, so there's stuff to know there, because even though we're on pre-release for the final Ultimate Cups, we do not have access to BT-12 at that point. So let's take a look at it. Let's look at our our top deck. Bloomlord is going to do what Bloomlord wants to do here. I think if they're going to do something for the next round, if they're going to keep this way of putting restrictions in and testing out themes and everything like this, I think you hit Hidden Potential Discover, completely ban it. The reason why I say this is so that when they get to do that next round, and it's Bloom Hydra Quartz, they don't have Bloom Lord gaining free value and then, going into Quartzmon just to close out game win. No. We don't need that. So we need a hero to save us, and hitting Hidden Potential Discovered for the next Ultimate Cup will make Bloom Lord a little more fair. It's just the combination between getting Hidden Potential Discovered and then double Bloom Lord is sometimes a lot scarier, and it just applies too much pressure that your opponent is just really on a back foot once two Bloom Lords hit the field. Especially if you have Mimi out and this one promotes a second stack up, and then you do Hidden Potential and then two stacks become Bloom Lords, you're kind of in a bad spot. Stuff like that really does put you on a back foot, and that's where people don't like to really fall behind. Yes, there are ways of countering stuff like this, Chumons and, Terriermons, but let's be honest, there's not enough negators in the game to counter every deck. I think by now we should have every color has one. Should have, every single version, so that during any of these formats, we can go like, okay, I know this is going to be more prevalent. This will be the one I side into, put in my main deck. Answers like this really does help out. Then we do have Blue Flare taking up second place at the most tops. So let's take a look. I said pull up. So, the old but true way of going about the deck is that, you have Metal Greymon that can come in with a rush. As long as you get a Greymon and Male Bergermon, it comes in for 3. And you get some damage in. It can multi-attack, stun something if there's 2 Digimon on your opponent's side of the field. And naturally, he stuns a few Digimon that way as well. But also another combination is its new Z Greymon, where it gets to restand for 2 cost on top of your Metal Greymon, which can lead to being very dangerous plays. Having access to Solrai and Sorajo can really put in some damage into your opponent, because now you stun them out of resources. And that gets scary for a lot of players. So stuff like that can lead up to being some nasty plays. And, Blazing Memory Boost, being able to +2 and then get a Kiriha out of the deal can be scary as can be. So stuff like this does add up eventually. And the deck is really strong. There's nothing wrong with the deck. It has a lot of potential. And then, we have Mirvamon that really has been doing a lot of good work. They banned the Cerberus Loop variant, but this Retaliation variant is really scary because, even if your opponent's at 3 Digimon, this Mirvamon Pop by Pandemonium Flame instantly puts in work. What do I mean by instantly puts in work? You know, popping this, boom, now you blow up one of their Digimon, usually the same level, and it's unspended usually. That now leaves them with 2 Digimon. Then you get Mirvamon to come out, spits out 2 bodies with Rush, and then boom, you can get into game lethal this way. So, and without Death X, a lot of these spammy wide board decks kind of come into valuing their own. There's not a lot of being scared of because there's not a lot of ways of just clearing a board for cheap. And that was Death X's job, is if you go too wide, like you get too close to the sun, Icarus, you will get burned. So Death X was that burn the sun itself to drop down on you. But now in this format, there's nothing to scare about. But even against Bloomlord, as long as you get double Retaliators, and then you get a Skull Greymon, let's say you toss a Skull Greymon and get it underneath the Mirvamon, boom. That is now value that they can't swing into the Mirvamon that they wanted to unless they're willing to trade. And that's not what they want to do. Usually to lose their Digimon in that trade is never worth it to them. Then we have Machiny Boy. So Machinedramon is one of those, I build a wall style stacking deck, and I can usually answer you kind of play, just because Chaosdramon gets sources back after the first wave. And even in worse circumstances, Analog Man plus Machinedramon can definitely make this into, hey, look, I now take this, pass it back to my turn, you are now screwed kind of situation. You know, the only thing I think you should be playing is maybe to slow down the Blue Flare player, and that is to tech in some Chikurimons. But I like that they have this Chikurimon here to de-digivolve. But all in all, the deck has a lot of tech sources in here, because the deck is going to do what it wants. Even just teching Hyper Infinity Cannon is really useful. I think the only thing I would probably take out is the Kazus and just go straight up. And what do I mean by straight up? I mean playing double black memory boost, and then because you can search out any piece you need in this list, because it is all black, it's just more vital than a Kazu in my opinion. But Kazu is really good because, especially if you have a cyborg or machine, it gains you an extra memory. So there's possibilities in place here. So I have no complete objections here, but that's just my opinion. Then we have All Force, another very skill-based deck. It's not an autopilot deck. It is a deck that you need to know what you're doing with it at all times. You know, Leomon plus Jerry is always good, but, you know, you don't have to play this. This could be just Kumamon and then any other tamers you want. You know, probably play Tai at a full playset. I think Jerry's really good at maybe 2, just because you need... Jerry's a dead card if Leomon's not there in hand. And Leomon is at least semi-decent, but it's very expensive to hard play. So for the trade-off to gain the memory and draw, it's not always worth it. But you know what it is about All Force. If you don't see All Force, you don't win. But if you see All Force and you don't see Rena, you might not be winning either. So those kind of 2 cards are constantly hand in hand. And if you don't see them, you're in a bad spot. Really bad spot. You know, that's stuff like that. And then we have Gallimon itself. Gallimon is just one of those decks that just says, I play the game how I want to, and I will answer and respond. You know, using Gallimon from the starter deck, that gets you an extra security plus, but also if your opponent has no Digimon deleted by this fact, gain plus 3000 DP. That can add up being 14k 2 checks. And even if you're facing a Blue Flare, instantly popping something that now you don't have 2 Digimon on board and now you're back to 1. You have that extra security check, 3 checks, you know, can really do some damage there. And then restand with Gallimon X Antibody, get the last 2 checks out there. There's 5 security, 1 turn. And then even at worst case, you restand, go into Crimson mode. If they have at least 10 in their security, boom, you're kind of winning game there too. So stuff like that does add up pretty quickly. And I think we have to take this into account when we're deck building and deck designing, just because decks like this really do exist. You like to be answering and having back and forth in a format, and we do have a lot of that recently with this Ultimate Cup. And I feel like that's huge in comparison. Even going into Dora Brickmon, The only deck you really can't answer unless you are playing the Doro Brickmon is one of those scary decks. If you're playing Machine Dramon and you don't see the Chikurimon insecurity at the time, Doro Brickmon's killing you. But all in all, it's still really good. I think we're in a good format with Ultimate Cup. I think is really quite healthy. Yes, Bloomlord is unhealthy, but green hasn't really dominated any format before. You know, you can say, oh, Grandis this, Grandis that. Grandis barely tops in any of its good formats, okay? So there's that. And then, this deck is all about OTKing, killing your opponent with 5 security checks, and then maybe hybrid for game, or, anything else just to set up. And it's just all about draw value with this deck. Then you have Black War Greymon. You know the drill here. The deck is going to do what it wants. It is the counter to OTK in most decks of the format because it can de-digivolve in most instances. Just like using, Greymon X Antibody and Deltamon plus Himikawa can really, when one of your Digimon would digivolve into a 2-color black Digimon card, you might spend this timer to reduce the devolution cost by 1. So this gets ridiculous pretty quickly. Let's say you go and you promote up your Sonorizamon. You can go up. Then as long as you have Himikawa, if you're at 2, you basically make your Deltamon a 2 cost, which is really good. And then Digivolve into your Metal Greymon. That's still a lot of pressure there. There's a lot of potential, especially with decks designs like this, that, as long as you can de-Digivolve twice in a game, really does actually express power. Then you have none other than this deck here, Dark Knightmon. Dark Knightmon hasn't really done anything recently, but what's really nice is that we do have, for an instance, Black is doing stuff. This is very surprising because Dark Knightmon hasn't really done anything even in its best format. Now with the Ultimate Cup rulings, Dark Knightmon has had a chance because being able to de-digivolve and remove threats really is useful. There's now pretensions of plays with this deck. It has potential. It produces blockers. It produces multiple blockers. Let's be honest. And that's huge, especially if, let's say, the first one is, Dark Knightmon X Antibody. They kill this. You play Dark Knightmon here for all the goodies of being able to de-digivolve and delete one of your opponent's Digimon with a play cost 5 or less. Stuff like this does add up pretty quickly. And then you get all the good value out of it because of the ability of Digicrossing. And that's just what you want to do. This deck has so much potential, especially because it wants to spit out blockers. It can block 3 attacks very easily and then produce anything you need to deal with threats. Then you have Yellow Hybrid being Yellow Hybrid shenanigans. And what do I mean by that? I know there's no Digitama. I don't know why. When I uploaded it, it didn't have it. But hey, being able to play the deck how it's supposed to be, using cards like Zoe to grab your hybrid stuff, Kazi, Zephyr, Jet Sylphie, the Recovery 1, all add up pretty quickly. You have like Holy Flame and Sunrise Buster, just really applying pressure, especially if you can loop it a little bit with Maid Mode so that you can get some value out of it. All this adds up pretty quickly, and a lot of players need to understand that. Sometimes the best way of getting diversity is having a clean slate. And to me, what I noticed a lot of players were saying, they love this format actually. It's refreshing. It's different. It's not the same thing you are facing every day. Sometimes you go to locals and there's like 3 Black War Greymon X players. Do you really want to just take the die and then lose to that? No. Sometimes you want to have a refreshing match. Seeing these different decks makes people excited. They really do thrive off of this. Like even with Gabumon here. This deck hasn't done much. Seeing this come back, especially just using like Tommy and Kumamon to be able to strip and stun a stack to all the way down to bare minimum, really nasty. But then you still have like going with a Gabumon turn that could just wipe out your opponent instantly can be nasty enough in itself. And then we do have one last OTK deck to talk about, and that is Grandy Boy. Grandy Boy made it, but that's just because Grandis is Grandis. It's resilient. I mean, using Kokuamon for the extra security check, plus this Grandis means that it's on his Digi-Evolution turn. That's 3 checks by itself. That's not terrible, actually, at all. And especially if you have this that gives it piercing. That's an instant value town there. I mean, you don't have to win with the OTK potential. You just apply pressure this way. That's huge in some circumstances just because you apply damage differently. And then you have Grandis Kuwagamon himself that is just going to restand himself. Anyway, if you go on top of a Grand Kuwagamon, you can go the old natural way, or you have another way of doing it. This is a lot of new developmental stages with these restrictions, showing you that decks can still do some things. And I think that is going to be vital, especially if they ever implement these restrictions into the permanent game. But we'll have to see, guys. And especially when it comes down to their feedback, the next, feedback thing, definitely tell them if you enjoyed this format. Let them know how much you actually enjoyed the differences, the diversity in the meta, the changes in the meta. Let them know that you enjoyed stuff like this, because this is how they're going to improve and produce more events. So guys, what did you think of the video? Let me know down in the comments. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.